Hey, Lee Tribe and anyone else new to the channel. My name is Lisa and I'm from PassiveShirtProfits.com. And today we're going to be talking about how to protect your digital art online. Now, there is no way to fully protect your work. What I mean by that is sometimes, look, if somebody wants it badly enough, they're going to find a way to get it. But there are things that you can do to deter theft. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And if you're a person who's on the fence of selling art online and you're worried about this and you're thinking, see, this is why I don't do this, because I don't want my stuff getting stolen. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but long story short, the money, for me, it's worth it. It's worth the headache of the theft. I'm not going to lie. So I'll talk about that more in the end, but let's start off with the 5 things that I do that deter digital theft. So the first thing that I always do, now this is not for uploading to print on demand. This is for promoting your images. So if you're using Instagram or Pinterest, hopefully, especially if you've been doing print on demand for a while, you are not just relying on that organic traffic. I think it's best to find a niche you can focus on, build a niche shop brand where basically you're targeting the same audience and you're building a following of people that would like that work. I think that's the best thing to do long term. So if you're doing that, you're going to probably be promoting your art on social media. So before I upload anything to Pinterest, I always blur it and I save it as a low quality JPEG file. You should never upload your art to social media with a high res PNG file. Now, some people might say, but if I do that, won't people not want to share it as much? No, it's not like you're going to blur it so much that you can't see the image. For me, it's worth protecting the art. I don't care about that. It hasn't seemed to affect, my repins or shares on Pinterest. Now, I'm using Photoshop and I use Photoshop and Illustrator for my business, but this can work, I would imagine, in almost any other software editor. Just look for the blur tool. It might be in the filter menu or the effect menu, but for Photoshop, you go up to filter, blur, and then I go down to Gaussian blur. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And how much for the radius amount here, it really just depends on the size of the image. So I'm not going to give you a value here. Just make sure you have the preview checked and then you can slide this little slider left and right. So the farther right you go, the more it's going to blur it. Now, what you want to do here is you want to blur it enough to where if someone were to try to scrape it and they try to enlarge it, then it would be difficult for them to have a high quality image, but not so much that someone would look at it on social media and go, "Ooh, look at the quality of that," and they just pass it on by. So it's about finding that balance. So we're going to just leave it right there. Now, for some people, this would be all they would do. I take it a step further. So the second thing that I do for social media is I always add an all over watermark to my images. And I do this right in Photoshop. So I have a template file set up very similar to this, where I have a bunch of different layers that I can turn on and off with this little eyeball. This is literally just text. So I could, type over this if I want. But it's just the website repeated down the image. And what's great about this is it's great for branding as well. I actually had somebody reach out to me on one of my niche sites because they saw the image on Pinterest and they were looking for some custom work. So it's good for branding as well. And so with the watermark, what I do here in Photoshop is I can change the opacity, and you could do this with almost any program. So you can adjust it and make it as dark or as light as you want. I like to keep mine a little bit under 10%. So that's at 8%, to where it's dark enough to where you can see it, but it's not too terribly distracting. Now, a lot of people just don't like watermarks because they feel like it distracts from this image. I don't care. When you have had so much stuff stolen, you really don't care. And I feel like in 2021, most people understand the purpose of a watermark, and they know that if they buy the image or if they get a t-shirt with the image, they know you're not going to get the watermark all over the design. To me, it's worth the protection. So before I upload to any social media, this is what my image looks like. So when you save this, I always make sure I have JPEG low. So this is the lowest quality format that you can get here. See that? So when I upload this to social media and somebody tries to grab this, I mean, they're going to have to do a whole lot of work if they want this image. I'm not saying they couldn't get it if they wanted it, but what I've learned is that most thieves are lazy, right? So they don't want to have to do a whole lot of work to delete watermarks and carrying on to get your image. This will drastically cut down on your social media theft. And the thing about the social media theft is, what's interesting about that to me is a lot of people just really don't know that it's not right to just take things off the internet. I have a friend that has a Cricut maker, which is that machine that you can make t-shirts and crafts at your house. And I asked her, I said, where do you get your images? And she goes, oh, just from Google. And I was like, what? You know, as a print on demander, I'm like, no, you can't do that. So I schooled her. I'm like, that's not legal. You cannot do that. So there's people that literally steal just because they're lazy and they don't care. And then there's other people that just don't know that it's not right to just take something off the internet just because it's there. So you have to protect your work if you're uploading to social media. Very, very important. So the third thing I use a lot, and again, this is with promotion, mock-ups. I have a premium subscription to placeit.net. And by the way, if you're interested, my affiliate link is in the description. But literally, guys, for $14 a month, and you won't pay that with my discount, you really do get a whole lot with this subscription. You can make t-shirt designs. They have templates. They have Instagram templates. They have videos for your t-shirts, video mock-ups, which work really, really good for Pinterest. But the great thing about a mock-up is, look at this. Who's going to be able to steal a design when it's wrinkled like that? And mock-ups tend to show a very small version of the design, and it typically is angled in some kind of way or wrinkled. So it just makes it very difficult for people to just grab your image. All right, so the fourth thing I like to do, now this is for designs that I have uploaded. I like to distress my designs. And the great thing about this is, not only do customers like distressed designs, but it can deter copycats from lifting them. I'm not saying it's going to completely prevent it, because I have seen some of my distressed images stolen before. And I'm going to explain a little bit later why that still happens when it's distressed, but it does help. And the more you distress the design, the better. Now, I do all my distressing in Photoshop. I have these brushes that I purchased many, many, many years ago. And if you're in my Photoshop course, you're probably very familiar with these, but they were $4. And I know you can get brushes for free, you guys, but sometimes I don't mind supporting, other artists, because let me just say this, as someone who wasn't that well versed in Photoshop when I started with print on demand, I mean, I knew a little bit of it, but there have been so many like custom shapes out there and brushes that I have bought from other designers that have really, really helped me make some very nice looking t-shirts. And it's really helped my creation process without me having to draw things, right? Or helping me distress my designs with these brushes. So again, I don't mind supporting people, but yeah, you can get free brushes, no doubt. But anyway, I use these brushes called Cracked Ink Distress brushes, and I got 8 of them. And so I loaded them into Photoshop. So in order to distress an image in Photoshop, I grab the eraser tool. So I just hit the E on my keyboard, and then I go up and select the brush that I purchased. And here's the brush right here. This is the pattern for what's going to be erased when I distress this image. And so what I like about these brushes is I can increase the size of them very, very large. Most of the default brushes in Photoshop are not that large, so it takes you longer to distress. So what I'm about to do is erase part of the pixels on this image using this pattern. So all I have to do is click and they'll go away. But quick Photoshop lesson in case anybody happens to have Photoshop and wants to learn how to do this. First, you want to select the layer of what you want to erase or distress. And then you're going to click this layer mask button. And what this does, this allows me to erase this or distress this, but I don't ruin the original image. So when I click like that, I haven't ruined this image. So if I want to delete this, I still have my original image if I ever want to go back and start over. But the reason why these images can still get stolen, if you notice around the border of the image, if somebody is scraping an image, they can still scrape it because there's a very defined border, right? So what I oftentimes will do, I might take a different brush, but if I really, really want to heavily distress something, I'll go around the edges like this and really kind of disrupt I do it a lot neater than this, and I really would not be using this particular brush. I would use something probably with a round edge, but I'm just trying to give you guys an example. The point is you're trying to disrupt that hard edge, and it kind of makes the image look cool as well. So if you can find some distressed brushes that do that for you, then even better. But I find that the more I distress something, the harder it is for a lot of these people to lift them up. Again, not saying it's going to prevent them completely from stealing it, but it does help. And once again, if I don't like that or I want to start over, I can right click, delete layer mask, and there's my original. Now, this is the final tip, and this is something a lot of people don't realize. There's 2 reasons I don't like to ever fill up the template when I'm doing a shirt, let's just say for merch by Amazon. A lot of people like to take the design all the way out. First of all, when you do that, I don't know if you've ever bought any of your shirts where you've done this. The design oftentimes falls underneath your underarms, and it's going to fall differently depending on the size of your chest and all that. But I don't like to make the image that large because it doesn't look that great on the shirt. It also makes it easier for people to copy it. And as we all know, Amazon has that doggone high quality zoom in res image. Like, what in the world is going on, Amazon? Why are you letting people see this high quality, high res, medium res, whatever image that people can just grab? It's crazy to me that they don't protect our images better than they do. So when you make it large like that, you're also making it easier for the copycats. Now, some people say, hey, I want my images to be large and I'm not changing anything. Okay, fine. But what I like to do is to make them roughly about this size or so, because I've noticed when people have stolen my designs from Amazon, I noticed their file is always a lot smaller than mine. And that's because when they scrape it, of course, they're not getting a high res image because it's a screenshot. So they can't blow it up that big. It'll be too blurry. So it forces them to have to use a slightly smaller image, because their image is already low res anyway. So I try not to fill up the template quite as much. Again, not everybody's going to be a fan of this tip, because I understand why sometimes you would want it to fill up because it might look better. But just kind of keep that in mind, especially with the fit. So let me just finish up by saying this. I know a lot of people will say, I don't want to do this because I don't want my art stolen. As someone who's been online for a very long time and made money a lot of different ways through websites, YouTube, print on demand, with all 3 of those platforms or opportunities, I've had stuff stolen from me. I've had websites scraped word for word. I've had YouTube videos scraped. I've had t-shirt designs stolen. But at the end of the day, for me, the success that I've had with these things have been worth the copycat threat, if you will. And I've just kind of learned to accept that anytime you do anything online, especially if you're successful with it, you're going to have things stolen. So it's really up to you to decide how much of that you're going to let bother you. Now, some people do. They let it bother them so much they quit. They don't want to do this, or they don't even want to get into it. And I understand that. Everybody has their own tolerance for this. So I respect that. But for me, the money's worth it. So what I do, if I see something out there, especially on a platform like Amazon, I don't go looking for it. But if I see something on a popular platform, I will go and report it. But to spend my day chasing designs on all these fly-by-night sites that are popping up thanks to bots, do you guys know as soon as you put something out there, a bot is scraping it and copying it? So you can spend your day chasing these copycats if you want, but at what point is that counterproductive? Because a lot of times those people doing this are not making that much money anyway. And I know it sucks to know that your stuff is being stolen, but again, this is what you're going to have to deal with. If you don't want things stolen online, don't do Kindle. I know somebody that had stuff stolen from their Kindle book. Don't build a website. Don't do print on demand. You're not going to be able to do anything. And if you have success, things are going to get stolen. And the crazy thing about print on demand, you don't even need success for them to steal it. They'll steal it as soon as you upload it. But for me, it's the nature of the beast. And I've just learned to deal with it. And that's how I deal with it mentally. The money that I'm making is worth the headache. And I don't spend my time chasing art, because if you look for it, you're going to find it. If you see it, report it, especially on these higher profile sites like Redbubble, Amazon. But these fly-by-night scraper sites, I don't have time for that. And that just helps me deal with this. So hopefully these tips gave you some insight onto some things that I do. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you in the next video. By the way, if you're new to print on demand, be sure to check out my complete guide for beginners. It is incredibly detailed with examples and guidance, perfect for a newbie or if you're struggling with your sales. Simply visit passiveshirtprofits.com, scroll down to the bottom, and click the thumbnail. See you there.